We can't wait till our kids are teenagers to talk about manhood and womanhood. We need to start early. Join me and my special guest for this important conversation today on Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Emily Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision, the podcast from Visionary Family Ministries, encouraging families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Rob Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries, and I want to welcome a special guest, Elizabeth Urbanowicz from Foundation Worldview. Elizabeth, welcome to Family Vision.
Thanks so much for having me on, Rob. I'm a faithful Family Vision listener, so I'm happy to be with you today.
Well, we're glad that you're here. We first got connected with you because you were speaking at the Illinois Christian Home Educators Conference in Illinois, and Amy and I were there at the same time, and we shared a meal together and so enjoyed the workshops that you were doing. And then we've been ministry friends online ever since. And I listened to your Foundation Worldview podcast, and you also are on YouTube and making a difference in so many families. And we're going to have an important conversation. We're going to do two parts here. We're going to talk about how to talk to our kids about some sensitive subjects: manhood, womanhood, marriage, family. Well, one of the realities in our culture today is that we need to be having conversations with kids about manhood and womanhood and gender and things like that way earlier than junior high and high school. In fact, all the way as early as the late preschool years and early elementary. And that's exactly what you're doing in your ministry. You have created and you're building, launching this summer, a brand new curriculum and training for families called God's Good Design. 30 lessons that parents do with their kids and young kids about getting a biblical worldview, a Christian worldview about God's incredible good creation of manhood and gender and marriage and family. So I wanted to have you on Family Vision because I want to get right into it. Today and in our next episode, we're going to specifically talk to parents and grandparents who might have little kids, preschoolers, late preschool, early elementary. Why should parents of even young kids start to think about how to talk about these issues with their sons and daughters?
Yes, I love that you asked the why question, Rob, because it's so important that anytime we're doing anything with our children, that we actually know the why behind it. Because if we don't understand the why, we're not going to be motivated to stay the course and really do something well with the children that God has placed in our care. And so when we think about, like, as you said, raising children 10, 20, 30 years ago, there was going to be so much less that they were exposed to just because technology was not quite as prevalent. There weren't so many deviations from God's good design that were not only accepted, but celebrated in our culture. So there's two main reasons why it is so important for us to start these conversations when our children are young. The first reason is there's just this weird, I don't know if you would call it like a psychological phenomenon or just principle, that whoever introduces us to a concept first, we view that person as the expert. And so with all that our children are going to be exposed to today, whether it's, a show that they see from a friend at the playground who has a tablet with them, or a conversation they have on the playground, or someone that they encounter at school or church, they're going to be exposed to so many things regarding gender and sexuality so much younger. And so if we want them to come to us with their questions and with their concerns, we need to make sure that we have that first conversation with them. I think about my own life. And to this day, as we're recording this, I am 38 years old. And to this day, anytime there's an issue in my house with something, I call my dad. Now, I know that there are many people in my church family, even in my immediate neighborhood, who are much more experts at the issue that I'm having than my dad. However, in my mind, because my dad was the first one to introduce me to, like how to take the back off of a toilet and like look at what's going on with it there, or how to check my oil in the car, because he introduced me to those things first, in my mind, he's still the expert, even though intellectually I know there are people in my life who are even more equipped than he is. And so we want to make sure that we have these conversations with our children first, so that when they encounter something or when they have a question or they're not sure about something, they come and have that conversation with us, where if they hear something about gender or sexuality from a teacher first, or from someone in the community, or from a friend, or from online, they're going to view someone other than us as the expert. So that's the first reason why we need to have these conversations really young. The second reason is whatever the first type of conversation or experience we have with something is, that's going to color our vision. If we wait to talk about God's good gifts of maleness and femaleness, of marriage, of family, of sexuality, if we wait to talk about those things until we encounter some form of deviation from God's good design, our children are going to view these things through a negative lens if the first conversation that we have with them is backtracking. I think, just a few years ago, I lived not that far away from you and Amy. I lived in Wheaton, Illinois. And right before I left, in this very lovely neighborhood that I moved into, the house next door to me sold. And the couple that purchased it was a couple with 2 women and 2 adoptive children. And I thought, now all of these families in my neighborhood are going to have a conversation, with their children, like it or not, because in an effort to love their neighbor as they love themselves and love God, they're encountering this deviation from God's good design. So it's so important that the first conversations that we have with our children are about the goodness of God's design and God's purposeful plan and the wonderful gift that it is to be created distinctly male or distinctly female, and the wonderful gift that it is to have marriage and sexuality and how that leads to family. So we want to make sure that we lay that positive biblical theology before our children encounter deviations, and we have to explain why this is not God's good design.
Well, I love that. And even simple things like, hey, God makes boys and God makes girls. God loves boys. God loves girls. God made you a boy. I'm so happy he made you a boy. God loves you. I'm so happy he made you a girl. God loves you. Just being direct and sharing those truths at earliest ages, like you said, is building truth into their hearts. Elizabeth, what would you say to a parent? They say, look, I control what my kids are exposed to. My kindergartner, first grade, second grader, I have filters on all the screens. We have a good school system. I'm not worried about them being exposed to this deviant stuff.
Well, first of all, I would say to that parent, well, good for you. I'm so grateful that you're proactive, because it's so important to be proactive nowadays. But then my next question would be, do you ever travel through the airport? Do you ever go to the grocery store? Do your children ever go to the dentist? Because in all of these places, our children are going to encounter deviations from God's good design. So even if we are a no screens household and we don't let any screens in our home and we don't have a smartphone and our spouse doesn't have a smartphone, our children are going to encounter these things because it's just the world that we're living in.
Wow.
And so it's so important to prepare them.
Yeah. Do you drive down the highway? Do you watch this? Do you watch the Super Bowl? These hyper-sexualized messages are all over the place. Amy has a quote, which I'll quote my wife, where she talks about how we've lost the right not to view porn. We've lost the right not to view it because it's on the billboards, it's on the commercials, it's on the tablets, the ads that pop up, right, on tablets. Your kid could be playing an innocent child's game on an iPad, but ads pop up which have inappropriate things on them. So like you said, I liked how you started that. Good for you, parents, that you control what they're exposed to. You have filters, you have a good school system. But I think it's naive and dangerous in this day and age to, I think, very rose-colored glasses. Maybe that's a nicer way to say it, to think that you are able to protect your 5-year-old's eyes and heart from all these things that are going on. Well, Elizabeth, we're going to come back and we're going to do part 2 of this conversation, because today we talked a little bit about the why, but I want to talk about the what. What do you say to a late preschool or an early elementary school kid? I think for a lot of us, we say, well, okay, I know maybe how to talk about this with a teenager, but what do you say at the earlier ages that are is age appropriate, but also biblical and important? And we're going to do that in our second conversation. But before we go, I want you to tell everybody how they can connect with Foundation Worldview and how they can connect with this great new family equipping experience, God's Good Design.
Yes, well, if you can remember the company name, Foundation Worldview, you can get to our site because it's simply foundationworldview.com. And if you go there, you can access all of our curriculums and our podcasts and webinars and book clubs, all of the resources that we have there.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate it. And I'd love to hear from you. What are your comments and questions about today's conversation? And most of all, if you have prayer needs for your family, our prayer team here at VFM would love to pray for you personally and do everything we can to help your family follow Jesus every day. You can send your comments and questions and prayer requests to podcast@visionaryfam.com. That's email. Email us, podcast@visionaryfam.com. We want to see you at our next live Visionary Family Conference in your part of the country. Find out when we're coming near you at our website, visionaryfam.com. Click the events button. And as always, we're looking forward to our next time together with you on Family Vision.